Yep. So, yeah, we're doing another one of these Sunday gimmick table things, which we haven't done a lot of because, well, haven't come across any gimmicks to, well, do videos on or even own, for that matter. Fortunately, a buddy of mine went by a Toys R Us close by, because we still have those up here, and he found this gimmick. He figured two birds with one stone, gave me material, and he could pass it off as an early birthday gift, which, there have been worse ways to start. So, this is the Pac-Man Plug-N-Play gimmick from Bandai and Bandai Namco. Yeah, that's all I got to go on. Has 12 classic Namco games. Connect and play. Yeah, it looks like a little pixelated Pac-Man with a cheap joystick and two big buttons and a switch for the eye with a little light on top. Brilliant. Inside of the box we have all the games listed. We have Pac-Man, we have Bosconian, Pac-Man Plus, Galaga, New Rally X. Guess they couldn't find one for old Rally X. Pac-N-Pal, Galaxian, Super Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Mappy, Xevious, and Pac Level 256. So you could play the 256th level of Pac-Man, and then you beat it, and apparently you get a glitchy screen. Or you're already playing the glitchy screen, I don't know. Well, we'll find out anyways, we'll be playing this soon enough. Screenshots of all the games included on this fine system. Wondering if these are the actual arcade emulated versions or close proximates of those, or if they're just NES ROMs and, you know, shut the hell up and that sort of thing. In the back, we got more Pac-themed Pac-Man graphics, bonus level 256, all the familiar iconography. This product is made in China and has a copyright of 2018, so apparently this is fairly recent, though I do recall seeing something like this ages ago. Could be something else, though. That's okay. I don't have a developer on this. I guess it's from Bandai. Okay. Anyways, copyright, blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. Funny, there are no sad onions or any other logos of note to be found here, which is quite unfortunate, but whatever. Anyways, shall attempt to do this carefully. Always a good sign when... shit. I shall endeavor to... Yep, nice hairy arm blocking the shot because I forgot to pre-cut the pieces of tape on the sides. Fortunately, I hope so. Kinda, sort of. There we are. Minimal to no damage onto the packaging, which I'm sure will make collectors very, very happy. So, yeah, that's the gimmick in all its glory, but got some plastic gift stuff to get rid of. Got some paperwork, which is much more important. Paper instructions on how to operate the device. I'll go with the English instructions because, yep. Turn off when not in use. 12 classic games. Connect for ages 4 and off. Quick little write-ups on each of the games, along with the controls on how to play the game, which is always important. And Xevious looks to be the only game that uses both buttons, which is and of course some more cautionary warnings, battery warnings, things of that nature. So I'm gonna have to pull this out, aren't I? Okay. Oh shit, more tape. Most people have these plastic things on the back. This is all taped up, so bear with me. I'll be right back. So despite my best efforts to try and preserve the packaging as much as possible in order to remove the device, I eventually gave up and just, ripped it. So that lost its value in the resale department. But on the other hand, I have a fancy little device to play. And oh look, it's got another clicky joystick, buttons, and that's your switch. So where are the cable? Hold on. So how do we open this thing anyways? I'm checking instructions. Brilliant, they don't tell you instructions on how to... Hold on. So you have to remove this panel. And that reveals the wires neatly tucked away in this little compartment, which I actually kind of like, to be honest with you. I think that's a nice touch and sort of justifies the overall size of this thing. Unfortunately, it has a screw on the battery compartment, which is not fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find some batteries. I'm going to clean this mess up, and we're going to hook it up. We'll play it, and we'll see what the games are like. And yep. Okay, so even though the box has a copyright of 2018, the device itself has a copyright of 2012, so this device is pretty old, a reissue if you will. And if you need a further reminder that this is ancient technology we're dealing with here, you have the good old mono composite cables, and not that much cable to begin with, so don't expect anything in terms of high definition. With this in mind, you're given 12 classic Namco arcade games, well, 10 to be honest. Pac-Man, Pac-Man Plus, and Pac-Man 256 are all technically the same game, with Pac-Man Plus being a hacked version of the game from Midway back in the day, where they would replace the fruit with alcohol, randomize the effect of the power pellets, i.e. not all the ghosts turn blue, and even render ghosts and mazes invisible while giving the overall game a bit of a speed boost, providing more of a challenge than the original Pac-Man. And as for Pac-Man 256, well, it's just a 256th level of Pac-Man, where you're given a modest complement of lives to possibly beat the level and see the infamous glitched screen. So if you ever wanted to experience that piece of business, here's an easy way to do it. All that having been said, aside from Pac-Man, you do have a rather modest collection of games, your usual suspects such as Galaxian, Galaga, Dig Dug, and Xevious, as well as the occasional suspects such as Super Pac-Man, New Rally X, Mappy, Bosconian, and Pac-N-Pal. And for what it's worth, these are surprisingly good recreations of the arcade originals, whether it's some form of emulation or just really good conversions running on somewhat capable hardware. Graphics, sound, gameplay, colors, for the most part matches that of the source material, with some slight slowdown in certain cases. It's not perfect, however. The vertical resolution has been reduced to fit the vertical length of the screen, and the heads-up display is moved to the side to fill some space. Xevious seems to have made the transition somewhat awkwardly, as a good chunk of the upper playfield has been cut off, giving the illusion of off-screen fire and kills. Even so, all these versions are functional, solid recreations, and if you want to keep track of your high scores, because it's a thing for some people, this device will actually save your high scores, which is a nice little feature to have.
Hardware-wise, it's a fairly responsive device. The buttons work well enough for the games they're used in, and while the joystick works fairly well, it's still somewhat stiff at times. You only have 2 buttons on the system, and to pause or reset the system, you'll have to hold down both buttons for a short while before an on-screen prompt appears. It's a rather cumbersome setup, and quite frankly, there's no real reason to not put an extra button for resetting the system. I don't think it's going to kill the overall presentation of the console itself, which wasn't the most comfortable thing to hold in my hands, but considering I've got a couple hours of solid gameplay with this thing, it's not the worst thing either. Take that for what it's worth. So that about does it for the pre-recorded bit. Let's get back to the live shot and close the book on this thing.
Alright, so first off I'm going to apologize for the clutter on the desktop. Sort of a unplanned change of plans. The couch is indisposed at the moment, so we're going to have to settle for this, but in any event, it's going to serve our purposes just fine, I think. So that was the Pac-Man Plug-N-Play device. Re-release of something that came out like a decade ago, I guess. And I gotta say, I was kind of impressed. The output is kind of unfortunate, especially nowadays, but yeah, the quality of the games were pretty good, I think. The ports, I guess you would say ports, they're not really emulated, because, you know, you have to make a couple changes in terms of, you know, rearranging the heads-up display and all that stuff. And while they're not perfect, they're not arcade perfect. Let's get that out of the way. There's a couple issues that keep them from being arcade perfect. Notably the slowdown in Xevious, for example, when a lot of stuff is going on, and also like the cutoff of the top portion of the screen. But for the most part, they're nearly arcade perfect, almost arcade perfect, but not quite there. They're pretty good recreations, ports, conversions, whatever you want to call it, of these classic Namco games, and they play really well. And the joystick I thought was pretty responsive. The buttons were pretty good. I got a couple hours of straight gameplay out of this, so I can't complain too much. It's unwieldy, yes, and slips quite a bit, as you could probably tell, but it gave me enough wire that I could sit on the couch, and it's not a bad little gimmick for something that came out like a decade ago. Something that was conceived a decade ago. In comparison to this thing, the Blast device from our old friends at Games. Some of you might recall I did a video on this ages ago, where I tried to plug this into my HDMI switch thing, and then I tried to plug it to my TV, and I couldn't quite get the ideal experience in either case. But this had NES ROMs, and a bit of a controversy behind this, because the box says there are arcade games, but there are NES ROMs. This came out like what, last year? And they're collecting dust in bargain bins everywhere. And then you have this thing that came out a decade ago, and you got almost arcade quality games. Not perfect, not quite there, but still pretty good. So I'd say if you want good Pac-Man as a plug-and-play thing, and you don't mind the archaic inputs, go with this. If you want to play Pac-Man's last infamous 256 screen without any of the work, it's a good way to do it. I mean, look, it's a nice little system. It plays well. The games are probably, you know, your mileage may vary, like any compilation would, but the quality is good. You know, I'm gonna say I was impressed. I wasn't expecting much, but I was impressed by what I got out of this. So I'm not gonna complain. I actually like this. It was a good little system. I might give it a go. You know, yeah, every once in a while I might pop this out and give this a go. So yeah, that's all I got. So anyone wondering, yes, I still have this laying around somewhere. It's buried in like the clutter, and you know, and I haven't tried to plug it in since the last couple of videos. And since then I've seen like these things have been on sale for like, I don't know, a couple bucks. Never had the inclination to buy them, because once is enough, and no matter how hard you try to However, Walmarts are still selling the Genesis flashback things. Actually, I have to go back and check if they're starting to sell the minis. Because I haven't been there, to be honest with you. But that's another story for another time, I suppose. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching. Till next time, take care, and good night. I'm going to clean this shit off now. Bye.